Welcome back to Alice Talks Football and welcome back to a live Manchester United news, transfer news and update show. Today is the day of our most important game of the season. We've got to go and beat Lyon at home. We should have beat them in the first leg with Onana's howler. Yeah, that was a howler from Onana. Otherwise, we would have come in with a 2-1 lead thanks to Joshua Zirkzee, but no Joshua Zirkzee today. Huge blow with his season over, especially as he was really starting to pick up form, become good. And since Ahmad got injured, Joshua Zirkzee was our best attacker. Now Joshua Zirkzee's injured. Højlund and Garnacho have got to compete for best attacker. I think it goes to Garnacho, to be honest. Onana, we've got updates on why Onana was dropped, how it went down. He will be back in goal today, but Vivell has already gone out there to Germany looking at Onana replacement, making contact and scouting a couple of names. It looks for me that United want to replace Onana. They will replace Onana with a young goalkeeper, someone that's seen as affordable, but they are looking out there. They are doing scouting. They are doing work. Goalkeeper was, we'll have a look at it a couple of months ago, to now, we maybe really do need a goalkeeper. That's sort of the stance, I think, inside United. We're going to talk about Vivell and his scouting. We're going to talk about the importance of winning the Europa League, because Amorim's future is massively decided by this Europa League. If we win the Europa League, Amorim's future will be in a much better place because he will have a lot more money to spend. We'll almost be 100 million richer if we're in the Champions League next season. Whereas if we don't win the Europa League, Amorim, next season it's going to be a lot harder for him. He's not going to have as much money to spend. It's going to be longer. So you've got to look at it in that sense of the importance of winning the Europa League for Amorim's future and job. Amorim spoke about that. We've got some injury news and updates ahead of Lyon. We will talk about the team versus Lyon. Jack Morehouse, I think, is in the squad. One report said that B and Sheary will now be in the squad because of Xerxes' injury. I don't know if there's truth in that, but I will see, and I will see if there's any information that comes out that B and Sheary could be in the squad today. So, hello, and let's get into the latest news. Please do hit that like button if you do enjoy today's video, and feel free to subscribe down below if you are new. So this is what's come out from Sport Bild. Manchester United Director of Recruitment Christopher Vivell has spoken to Eintracht Frankfurt CEO Marcus Crochet about their goalkeeper Kaua Santos and his future plans. Manchester United have been interested in Santos since last autumn, is the first story coming out. Now, I think this story is particularly interesting for many reasons. It mentions that Vivell has already spoken to the Eintracht Frankfurt CEO about their goalkeeper. We are getting news, okay, and this is not just we being linked to a goalkeeper. This is now news saying we are actually talking to goalkeepers, talking to clubs about their goalkeeper. Now, the last few weeks, there's been a lot of speculation around Andre Onana's future. Will he go? Will he stay? We've been linked to a few goalkeepers. We had the Muppeteers, we had other news articles saying, look, we're going to be looking at a new goalkeeper. We've had a lot of news and information around the goalkeeping situation at Manchester United, but it sort of just stayed there. We're now getting news coming out from Sport Bild, who are credible when it comes to German. I'm talking credible when it comes to German leagues, Bundesliga, saying Man United are just looking at goalkeepers. It's not just pointless links. We're being linked to a goalkeeper here, we're being linked to a goalkeeper there, we're being linked to this, and this thing. They're saying United have actually spoken to CEO and inquired about goalkeepers, the price, and everything ongoing. Which says to me, you wouldn't be doing that unless you were seriously thinking of offloading Andre Onana. It's gone from rumours Onana could go with me like this keeper and that keeper, but who knows, to now reports that Saudi want Onana. Man United are now more open to selling Onana when it wasn't a priority. But now United are actively talking to keepers. Christopher Vivell is actively talking to this club about their goalkeeper and that club about their goalkeeper. Who is Sport Bild? What kind of source is that? Sport Bild, when it comes to Bundesliga news, is credible. When it comes to general news, but when it comes to Bundesliga-related news, it was credible. Like, they were one of the first people to confirm sort of Delict and Mazraoui and that there was interest there, that we were going to go for it as well. So I'd say Sport Bild is somewhat credible. It just depends on who they're reporting. Like, The Sun is the worst source. The Daily Star is an awful source. Fichaeus is probably the worst source. The Sun, the Daily Star, Fichaeus, Footy Insider, they're the sources. I wouldn't listen to them. I think they're crap sources. You have sources that can be hit and miss, like Caught Offside, and Dean Jones. You have slightly more credible sources in Luckhurst, Jamie Jackson, Rob Dawson, but sometimes they can have a little bit of an agenda with their writing. And then you've got the more and more credible sources as you go up, the Laurie Whitwells, the Andy Mittens, the David Ornsteins, the Fabrizio Romanos. They're the ones really worth listening to. But Bild is probably in that second tier. And for German news, it's probably a tier 1 for German news. It's a pretty credible outlet of information, in my opinion, for German news. If they were talking about a Serie A player to Man United, I wouldn't really take it as much. But yeah. Muppeteer, I'd say, are a good source. They're not quite Athletic, Whitwell, Ornstein, but I'd probably put them in the tier 2 of sources. I think that they get, quite a bit of information, especially considering they're not United journalists, that seems to be quite accurate. But there's a lot of people that get a lot of information actually out there that aren't journalists. And, obviously I'm lucky that I DM a few people and I find out bits and bobs. But, it's a lot of information that gets out about Man United behind the scenes. But yes, continuing on, I was going to read some chats. Goalkeeper is such a problem, just not an option to ignore. Yeah, if you'd have asked me this a couple of weeks ago, I'd have said, you know what, we can maybe keep Onana for another year because striker, 10, wing back, centre back, centre mid. But now I'm like, no, we need a goalkeeper. For me, the most important thing is a striker. The second most important thing is a midfielder that can progress the ball. And then you look at that and you look at 10s, well, we need another 10. And then you look at, can we split the funds between a right wing back, a centre back, and a goalkeeper? For me, can we get a good centre back on the market for 20 million? Can we get a good right wing back on the market for 20 million? And can we get a goalkeeper on the market for 20 million? That's 60 million for 3 positions. Okay. But then the other money will go on a proper number 10. The other money will go on a proper striker, and the other money will go on a proper centre mid. Now, we're going to talk about Angelo Stiller in a minute. I think Angelo Stiller would be a very good bit of business for Manchester United. That's apparently he could be 30, 40 million. That's something I'd look at doing, to be honest. 4-0 win, Onana man of the match, dancing and screaming. Allison, watch along tonight. Yep. Do you know what? If we can have a 4-0 win and Onana saves the penalty as a man of the match performance, I'll be very happy with that. Very happy with that. Some with certain top German journalists, mostly reliable German players and club. Yeah, there's a lot of good journalists in Germany, but they're only reliable with a Bayern Munich or something. If they start talking about Italian players, it's like weird. Neil Costas, yeah, he's pretty awful. In terms of his reliability. He said that De Gea was coming back. I remember that report. He kept telling us we got Qatar. Yeah, I mean, his credibility is down the drain. But look, some journalists think, well, what can I say to get clicks? Stiller is probably Bayern bound. Sadly, you are probably correct with that. But the best journalists are definitely Laurie Whitwell, David Ornstein, Fabrizio Romano. They're the best 3. Just followed by the Simon Stones. The Andy Mittens are also really good when it comes to news. But let's dive into some more information. As Steve said here, if Onana didn't make these mistakes, Man United would have 1 foot in the semi and will probably make semi. Now it looks harder. 100%. Onana, I think the annoying thing is, if Onana hadn't given all that talk before the game, it wouldn't have been as deep. It would still been an awful performance, but the fact that he was being booed all game, all that talk, if you give the talk, you've got to deliver the performance. And he couldn't do that. He just could not do that. So let's talk about the goalkeeper that we are looking at, Santos, a player that we haven't been linked to loads, but I think in terms of affordability, in terms of potential, this could be one of Vivell's sort of gems. Because even if Onana isn't sold, Man United might say, let's bring in a £15 million goalkeeper to replace Bayendier. That could maybe push Onana. It's the other way, because Bayendier, look, Bayendier was crap at the weekend. I'm fair. I have no issue with Onana playing versus Lyon because Bayendier, I don't think Bayendier is better than Onana. The problem is, if we had Sergio Romero, we'd be in a position where Onana would be on the bench again, because Sergio Romero would be good enough to take Onana's position, and he was a fantastic backup keeper. But we need a backup keeper that is a lot better, that even if Onana stays, we've got someone a bit better than Bayendier that I think could take the position. And obviously, the guy we've been looking at is now Santos. This is the guy that Vivell has been talking to Eintracht Frankfurt about, and is one of the most promising goalkeepers in Europe. So, Ben Matterson did a thread on this. I'm not going to read out the whole thread. Go search him up. Go look for Santos in his DMs. And if you want the full thread and more information on this. But this was the first slide of this thread, which I think is a good overlay of what his strengths and weaknesses could be. Now, interestingly, he is 21 years of age. I think he's 22 now. He's 6'6". So, I tell you what. And he talks about his athleticism, catching spots, wingspan, reaction speed as strengths, claiming crosses. But he also talks about he's good on the ball, line breakers, clip passes, good distribution. So that's good. I think distribution is needed. I think penalties is needed. Box presence is needed. But he talks about, obviously, when you're that big, your wingspan, your shot stopping, which is something Onana struggles with. He highlights areas of development, which could be punching crosses. It could just be experience and positioning, which I think gets better and better. And obviously, I'm not the biggest fan of bringing in young player after young player after young player. We need ready-made players now. But I think goalkeeper is one of those positions where we could just go with someone a little bit younger. We could just go with someone a little bit younger. But this is the goalkeeper we're looking at, and this was what Ben Matterson has put on him. A lot of people say it looks like a future star. Well, I knew a lot of people were going to say, who was that? And considering I've watched about 3 games of him this season, I thought the best thing to do would just get this up on the screen so people have an understanding of who he is, his strengths and weaknesses. Baindir, nothing special, but so odd. Players kept passing back to him when he lacks the ball. Yeah, but Onana's much better than Baindir on the ball, but shot stopping there isn't really much between the two. Baindir got his chance, but he was just poor. Like, he did well in the Arsenal game, and everyone was like, let's get Baindir in. And I said, well, with Onana stinkers, you might as well start Baindir, but you can just tell that he's not good enough. That's the truth of the matter. I just got sent something really weird. Let me just ignore that. I thought it was news. It's just something really weird. I wish we still had a De Gea and Dean Henderson as our main and backup goalkeepers. I tell you what, we've gone from having Dean Henderson as a backup keeper to now having 2 keepers worse than Dean Henderson. And Dean Henderson, to be honest, even though Palace shipped 5 to Newcastle last night, he was their best player. Has to be a mix of youth experience, risky, bringing in all the developing types. 100% agree. That's why, if it was me, I'm looking at Angelo Stiller, 24 years of age, good at progressing the ball. I'm looking at Cunha, 25 years of age, entering his prime. I'm looking at Victor Osimhen, 26 years of age, entering his prime. And then other positions, cool, a young goalkeeper in Santos. Cool, maybe a young centre-back that fits the profile Ruben Amorim wants. Cool, maybe a young right wing-back. If we can bring 6 players in, and 3 of them aged between 23 and 28, I'm happy with that. And I'm talking, ready. If 3 of those 6 signings are ready and the other 3 are sort of your Dorgus, your Aiden Heavens, where they suit Amorim's system and can learn and grow, I'm happy with that. I think Aiden Heaven, actually, I've been really impressed with him. It's a shame that he's going to be out tonight. He's taken a bit of a blow and a bit of a knock. But yeah, we lose tonight. It's over for the club. Forget any quality signings in the summer. Well, we could still sign good players in the summer, but it's harder. If we win tonight, we win Europa League, there's a lot more we can do in the summer. In terms of what we can, if we sell Rashford, we sell Sancho, we sell Anthony, and we sell, Garnacho, we're going to have funds to do a fair bit in the summer. But yeah, we have to sell well to do stuff in the summer. But at least if we win the Europa League, we get that little bit of boost coming in as well. Right, continuing on. The phone's just been bleeping. I want to dive into a few of the stories. Ten Hag treated De Gea awfully. Yeah, I think that moving on from De Gea was the right decision, but Onana wasn't the right replacement. I think De Gea was becoming a liability, but I don't like the way that he was treated, how we offered him a new contract, then ripped it up. And I think moving on from De Gea was you can say it was the right decision. The way we did it was the wrong way, and the way we replaced him was the wrong way. Diogo Costa from Porto is definitely a good choice, but he's going to be 40-50 million, and I don't think we're in that sort of period to spend that kind of money on a goalkeeper again. But let's continue on into some more news and more stories. So, this was said in regards to Onana and him being dropped, a little bit of context behind the whole situation. On Saturday afternoon, Ruben Amorim called Onana into his office and told him that, out of concern for his health, he would rest him against Newcastle. Onana understood this decision and followed Amorim's instructions as he spent Saturday and Sunday with his family at home and watched the Newcastle match on TV. Onana returned to training on Monday, refreshed, and after talks with George Vital, goalkeeping coach, and his assistant Craig Mawson, Amorim decided to start Onana against Lyon on Thursday. So what Paul Hurst is saying is, Onana was given the weekend off, refresh, take a break, clear your mind, spend it with your family, and has had a conversation. Baindir wasn't particularly impressive, and Onana starts Thursday. I think if Baindir had put in a 10 out of 10 performance, Baindir would have started on Thursday, but Baindir wasn't particularly good. And I think while Onana was worried that he was going to completely lose his place, I think Baindir's poor performance meant that Amorim's like, I might as well stick with Onana. He's probably the better of the two. We just need to get him in form. He's very mistake prone, and I think Onana is definitely a confidence player because he was awful in the Champions League last season, but then I thought he was really good for 5-6 months and really got into form and made good saves. I think we found that with Onana. He can make mistakes, but then he can make these big saves. So I'm hoping we can get some confidence in him, but he's going to be completely null of confidence, which makes me worry he's going to make more mistakes when he hasn't got that confidence. So it looks like Onana is back in goal for the game. We will go through the lineup for today's game versus, I was about to say Frankfurt, Lyon as well. But Lyon are in very good form at the moment. De Gea could have stayed another season or two, some mistakes creeping in, but still won a Golden Glove in his final season. We could have done, if we'd have kept De Gea for another season, it wouldn't have been the end of the world. He was becoming a scapegoat. Romero was better than Henderson. Bayindir has never been given a run to prove himself. This game was gone anyway. He made his error, but a lot of players were not offering him a pass. But he's never been good with the ball. I mean, look, maybe you give Bayindir a run of games, but I'm not convinced by him. I'm not. He could maybe do a better job than Onana right now, but I'm not convinced that he's the answer. Anyway, let's continue on into some more news and stories. So not only has Christopher Vivell been actively speaking to Frankfurt about their goalkeeper, but he's also been doing a little bit of business over in Germany, a little bit of scouting, a little bit of watching players. Manchester United head of recruitment, Christopher Vivell, was on tour of Germany over the weekend watching Stuttgart and RB Leipzig. He wanted to get a closer look at Leipzig's young players and is keeping a close eye on Benjamin Sesko. Now, I believe that Sesko is Arsenal bound. I believe that Benjamin Sesko will go to Arsenal, but I do believe that United like Sesko, and if they feel that they can get him, they will make a move. I don't think we pay more than 60 million on Sesko. I think he's young, he's raw, and there's elements of his game that needs to improve, and I do worry he could struggle like Højlund would, but he's a very good striker. We've been watching him for a while. We watched him before he even went to RB Leipzig when he was a really young player, and we definitely like the player. Reliable sources said United like Sesko. The feeling is he's probably going to go to Arsenal. Arsenal want Gyökeres or Sesko. I don't know who they get. I think if they get Gyökeres, maybe we get Sesko. But I think it will be harder to get Sesko because of the fact that we don't give our strikers service. We're a graveyard for strikers at the moment. We might not be in Europe next season, but we're looking at Sesko. We like Sesko. That is true. But we're also watching Stuttgart. And it didn't name what Stuttgart player we're looking at. But if I look at what Manchester United need, we need, after striker, the second most important position for me after striker is a midfielder that can progress the ball. And I think he's Bayern Munich bound, but Angelo Stiller is the one player I look at from Stuttgart and think that is the player we need. That is the player we need more than anybody else. Maybe we're looking at the goalkeeper, maybe we're looking at the fullbacks, but I really hope, he didn't name who we were scouting from Stuttgart, but I really hope it was Angelo Stiller that he was keeping an eye on. Because Agate can do this and this and this off the ball, and Agate can put in a shift off the ball. But on the ball, Agate massively lacks. He has his limitations, and we're seeing this when we can't break down teams. We need somebody that can receive the ball from the centre-backs, and is just really comfortable on the ball, able to recycle the ball here, do this, do that. And Angelo Stiller can do that. And I think Angelo Stiller would be such a good addition to United. If I could sign only 3 players this window, it's Osimhen, it's Cunha, and it's Stiller. They are the 3 players I think would make a huge difference to United. They're the 3 players I think we need the most. So it'd be interesting to see if it was Stiller. The problem is, again, if we don't win the Europa League, our pool is poor. We'd have come 14th in the Premier League. We're not playing good football. We've been crap for a while. I know we're Manchester United, but if you want to bring in a Stiller who's looking Bayern Munich bound or a Sesko that's looking Arsenal bound, we're in a very difficult position to do that. Because it's not about just scouting and finding the right players, but it's now the hope that the players want to come to us. And you're right, we should have got Girassi. We should have absolutely gone for him. You look at the goals he's scoring for Dortmund, we were questioning, was it a purple patch, this and that? But when you look at, was it 15 million release clause? We should have done that, £15 million. That is a deal that I think we're now regretting missing out on. Not doing anything in that January window when we could have got him. Why doesn't Højlund score in the Europa League? The thing about Højlund was he was doing shite in the Premier League, but he'd come and do the Europa League and he'd be good. And now he's doing shite in the Europa League. I do think it's confidence. I don't think Højlund should become a shite player this season. I think he was quite good last season and showed signs. But a lot of the things that Højlund was doing good last season, he's not even doing this season. I think there's confidence is a massive part of Rasmus Højlund and his lack of form. I don't think he's as bad as he's been playing, but he clearly needs a new environment for his career. It's just alarming. The way he's regressed is alarming this season. Environment is a massive thing. Look at Rashford. He's gone to Villa. He's thriving. I don't think Rashford would have been that good if he stayed at us. And I'm a big Rashford lover. So it's glad that he's gone to Villa and he's thriving. I think environment, particularly in attack, can make a huge difference to players. And that's something that we've got to improve. We've got to improve the environment. We've got to improve the way that we attack because we're not scoring that many goals. That's one thing. Højlund isn't a bad player last year. He cooked. Well, he was raw last season, but when he was good, you could see what he was worth backing. Højlund last season, we all knew we needed another striker. We all knew he probably wasn't ready to lead the line, but we saw enough from Rasmus Højlund last season to say there's a player here. We aren't seeing anything from Højlund this season to say there's a player here. That's the thing. He does well when the team does well. Well, he's a striker. That is the case with a lot of them. But we need more from Højlund. Most fans were calling Girassi a one-season wonder that window. I guess it was too early to know at the time. That was the thing. And I think when you didn't have another striker, I think we should have taken that risk on Girassi. When you look at the fee and you look at what we needed, an experienced striker, I think we should have taken the risk. But I get to an extent why United didn't do it. But I think looking back at it now, it's very easy to say, yeah, we missed out there. We missed out there. He probably is what we need. Do you think United could go for Thomas Müller as a free agent? No. I think it's an Eriksen 2.0. I don't think we play that slow. If you could sign one player from Arsenal, who'd you sign? Declan Rice or Saka? One of the two. Probably Declan Rice. No, who would you sign? Declan Rice or Saka? I don't know. Other Arsenal players. Gabriel's good, Saliba's good, but it would be Rice or Saka. Probably Rice. I think a Rice-Bruno midfield would be so good. But then Saka's unreal, and we could play Ahmed Win back and Saka 10, or I don't know, one of the two. If I could sign a Liverpool player, probably Gravenberch or McAllister. Gravenberch does suit Amorim Ball. Gravenberch does suit Amorim Ball, probably. Yeah, Declan Rice was unreal, wasn't he? Unreal. We almost signed. Oli wanted us to sign Declan Rice. Oli basically begged the board to sign Declan Rice, and they didn't do it. And then they went and signed Ronaldo, whom we probably needed Declan Rice more. No disrespect to Ronaldo, but he was, he was class. He scored goals, and the moment of signing Ronaldo was great. But Oli wanted Declan Rice that summer, and I think that was a huge miss not getting Declan Rice. Phenomenal player. I wanted him at Man United. I didn't think he was 100 million, but I said I would pay 70 million for Declan Rice. I was annoyed that we were going for. Who did we even go for? I was annoyed that we hadn't, I was pissed off we went for Mason Mount over Rice and Caicedo. I said we should have got Rice and Caicedo over Mason Mount. And I was right about that. And I don't want to be right about that, but it was annoying. Anyway, let's continue on. Manchester United could expect to earn 85.8 million as a minimum if they qualify for the Champions League by winning this season's Europa League. As part of the expansion to the new 36-team format this season, UEFA increased the total amount of money distributed to clubs in competing in the Champions League. Around a quarter of that is shared equally among 36 clubs, with each receiving €18 million starting fee. Clubs also receive performance-related payments on how they progress. The rest of the money, around 35% of that, is paid out on the basis of the club's historic European performances, blah, 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 blah. Basically, what the Athletic is saying is we could be £100 million richer if we win the Europa League and qualify for the Champions League, which, when we're in this financial situation, when we need to invest in the squad, this is something we need. Ruben Amorim makes comments on this, saying, I think it's about the budget. When planning for next season, the Champions League can change everything. If you're in the Champions League, you play top teams on a Wednesday and at the weekend. This is the best thing, but we need to have a team. I basically see that as Ruben Amorim basically saying if we win the Champions League, we'll have more money, we're able to attract more players, and we will have a better summer, which will put us in a better position next season. On top of the fact of that, obviously, the better we do, on top of the fact that if we're in the Champions League, we play on a Wednesday, and Wednesday, Saturday, Wednesday, Sunday is a lot better than playing Thursday, Sunday. Thursday, Sunday is not what people want to do. It's not how people want to play. Thursday, Sunday, Thursday, Sunday. So on top of that, you've got all of that as well. Bear with me a sec. So I think obviously being in the Europa League is huge. It's huge for Amorim. Amorim's future could be massively impacted by winning the Europa League and being in the Champions League, Because if we're in the Champions League, we've got a lot more money to spend. We can bring in better players. We can have a better window, and Amorim will be in a better position next season for it. If we don't sell well and we don't win the Europa League, then we're not in a position where we can invest much in the squad. And this squad clearly needs a lot of investment. So it's worrying in that sense. Would you bring Cole Palmer in? Yes, of course I'd bring Cole Palmer in. Rice Saka Ballon d'Or says same Miasi. I mean, maybe not quite Ballon d'Or level, but I tell you what, Declan Rice looked like the Galactico on the pitch yesterday, didn't he? You know, all the Real Madrid Galacticos. Vinny crying he didn't get a Ballon d'Or, but I tell you what, Vinny doesn't look a Ballon d'Or winner to me. Mount and Onana fees were essentially Rice right there. If I could go back in time and trade Onana and Mount for Declan Rice, I would absolutely do that. I would give United all these warnings. We've missed out on so many times because Woodward put owner dividends ahead of backing the manager to kick on when we were moving in the right direction, when then we wasted funds. True, and I also think that John Murta actually tried to do a better job than Woodward and cared more than Woodward and tried to back Ten Hag more than Woodward. But he would go and panic and was so desperate about pleasing the fans and backing Ten Hag that he would go and spend 85 million on Anthony, 70 million on Casemiro. You've got Woodward that was a bit tight here and there, and then you get Murta that was just spending funds way too much. 72 million on Højlund, 55 million on Mason Mount. He was so desperate to please Erik ten Hag that he was getting deals done for such ridiculous prices. So it was like a mixture, I think, of the two going down there. Money's not always the most important thing. You got to get scouting right, true, but the more money we have, probably the better. Anyway, let's continue on into some more news and stories. Manchester United are set to try and sign Chris Rigg and Joe Bellingham this summer. United have been impressed with Bellingham. I believe he's perfect for Amorim's system. I think if you sign Angelo Stiller and Bellingham, and then you've got, Bruno, Collier and Agate and Maino, that's the pivot sorted for the future. I do. I think that's the pivot sorted for the future, but I don't think Joe Bellingham's the answer now. But I think he's the answer in the future. I think he's got the physical levels, but I think it's Stiller and a Bellingham. Boom. If we're going to sign anyone from the Championship, though, Hayden Hackney, I think he's the most ready and developed. Ruben Amorim confirmed that De Ligt is going to return this season, but he's currently injured, will miss Lyon. Aiden Heaven will also miss the Lyon game. He had an issue in training. Ahmad not ready to return this month, but hopefully we'll see him before the end of the season. And that sadly, Joshua Zirkzee's season with Manchester United is over. I like Joe Bellingham, but we need somebody now. If Collier's fit, need him to get some minutes, look bright in cameos, I agree. Hopefully Collier can stay fit. I wouldn't get Job. I wouldn't get Job unless he was like a second midfield signing, if you know what I mean. I wouldn't get him as the guy to go with a pivot. I would get him as a second midfield signing. I think we need a Stiller, we need a Hackney, we need a Subamende type player. But obviously, this is the latest on the injury front here. It was also said that Marcus Rashford is focused on proving himself at Aston Villa for the rest of next season to attract attention from to attract attention from Barcelona and PSG. PSG don't need Rashford, Barcelona do. Do Barcelona have the funds for it? I'm not sure. But I think Rashford is a very good player and we should make funds for him. But if we're not going to make funds for Rashford, please make up with Amorim. Please keep him because he's a lot better than what we have. Ruben Amorim was asked about his team and why he cannot change his principles, blah, 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 as you can see on the screen, and was sort of talking about he's not going to change his principles, he's going to stick with them, it's worked with him at Sporting and all of that. Which brings me into Manchester United versus Lyon starting 11. Let's talk about the Lyon game. Let's talk about everything we need to know in regards to the Lyon game, because one thing we do know is Onana is starting in goal. Dorgu got a rest, which means he will be starting at left wing back. How good was Harry Amos versus Newcastle, by the way? I thought Harry Amos was very impressive. Delo will be right wing back. Mazraoui is right centre back. Yoro is left centre back. And Maguire is central centre back. That's going to be the team. I think we will see Bruno maybe deep. Actually, you know what? I think we're going to see this again. And I don't like this. I don't like Casemiro and Agate, but I think we're going to see that again. Because there's no Zirkzee. We're going to play Bruno higher up. We're going to play Højlund. I don't like this from free, by the way. I think it's going to be this. I think that's what we're going to see. Because I don't think Mount is ready to start. Maino's picked up another little knock. He's not ready to start. I think that's what we're going to see. Because no one else can really play 10. We've got no other options. I mean, you've got a Jack Morehouse. B and Sheary could be on the bench. But, yeah. It'll be interesting. Can Stiller be a deep-lying playmaker? I believe so. Amos was decent. He was good, wasn't he? For Harry Amos to do that against Newcastle, Champions League level Newcastle was impressive. I thought Amos had a good game. I didn't think he lacked physically much. Yeah, I thought Amos looked absolutely solid versus Newcastle. Maybe you play Mason Mount. Do you know what's interesting? Hear me out. Maybe that works. I don't know. Do you know how last season in the FA Cup, Erik ten Hag started Bruno at striker over Højlund? You could try something like that. Ideally, I would rather have Maino in here than Agate, but I don't think Maino's ready to start. The problem is Collier's been injured, Maino's been injured, Ericsson's not it. There's very limited options. You could look at that now. Mount up front, I'm not sure. We did do Maino up front in one of the games, didn't we? Yeah. I mean, with Xerxes being out injured, could he try Maino up front? I don't know. Being Cheery could be on the bench. He could. I think if we can't have Cheeto, surely Being Cheery's going to be on the bench. Who knows? I think that's probably. I don't know. I wouldn't like Garnacho as a striker. I think it will be. I don't know if Mount is ready to start. So I think that this will be the lineup, and I'm not convinced by this lineup. But Bruno Fernandes, do your thing, do your magic, score a goal, and let's get through to the next round. Yeah. Maino's not injured, but he picked up a knock in training, but he's training fine. He's just having a few injury issues. We need to manage that well. Same with Luke Shaw. A lot of players just been picking up injuries here and there, which is frustrating. Yeah. Anyway, should try Maino up front again. He's best at close control. To be honest, he brings that bit what Xerxes brought. He can at least keep the ball, unlike Højlund. Bruno false 9 could work. Tactical genius. I mean, we've got no options. We're like, oh, do we try Bruno false 9? There's don't know. David says weakness. Dorgan Delo as wingers. It's not the best attacking options, is it? But what can we do? Anyway, thank you for joining into today's live show. I will be back for Manchester United versus Lyon tonight. Come on, United. If there's any breaking news, there will be a video or live stream later this afternoon. But thank you for tuning into today's show. Let me know how you're feeling down below. And yeah, I'm nervous, but I think we can get the win. Thank you for watching. Bye.